What does a world with China as the sole dominant superpower look like? I mean, a little bit underlying our discussion is this kind of idea that U.S. is the good guys and China is the bad guys. First of all, dividing the world into good guys and bad guys seems to somehow miss the nuance of this whole human civilization project we're undertaking. But what does the world look like where China is the dominant sole superpower in a unipolar world?
Well, I don't tend to think of the world in terms of good guys and bad guys. As a good realist, I think that, states are states.
Mhm.
They're all black boxes. I don't discriminate between democracies and autocracies.
Mhm.
But having said that, I am an American.
Right.
And as an American, I'm interested in the security of my country, the survival of my country. So I want the United States to be the most powerful state in the world, which means I want the United States to dominate the Western Hemisphere. I want us to be a regional hegemon, and I want to make sure that China does not dominate Asia the way we dominate the Western Hemisphere. It's not because I think we're the good guys and they're the bad guys. If I were Chinese and I were in Beijing and I were Xi Jinping's national security advisor, I'd tell him what we got to do is make sure we dominate the world or dominate our region and then do everything we can to undermine America's position in the Western Hemisphere, right? That'd be my view. So I guess you could say I do view the world in terms of good guys and bad guys because I'm an American. And
More like us and them. Versus
it's us and them. That's a nice way to put it. Yeah, it's us versus them. Not so much good guys versus bad guys.
Is it possible to have a stable, peaceful world with a good balance of power, where it's China and U.S. as superpowers? It's a bipolar world, no longer unipolar.
Yeah. Okay. So you're hypothesizing a world where they dominate Asia.
Yeah.
And we dominate the Western Hemisphere.
Yep.
I believe there would be a great deal of security competition, intense security competition between those two superpowers.
The definition of intense matters here. So it could be small military conflicts, or it could be extremely large, unstable military conflicts. Right?
Well, conflict, let's use the word war.
Okay.
So I distinguish between security competition and war. And what I'm telling you is you'll have an intense security competition where there's no shooting. Or if there's shooting, it's mainly proxies that are doing the fighting.
Got it.
Much like the Vietnam War, right? Or you could have a case where one of those superpowers was involved in a war against a proxy of the other superpower.
Mm-hmm.
Korean War, think the Korean War.
Mm-hmm.
The United States fought the Chinese who were allied with the Soviets at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But a war between the United States and China, just like a war between the United States and the Soviet Union during the Cold War, that's what you really want to avoid. So I think you'd have an intense security competition, right? You'd have wars involving proxies of each of those two superpowers. And you would probably have some wars where one of the superpowers was involved in a proxy, right, with the other one of the other superpowers' proxies.
So it seems likely then, if that's the case, then it would be Taiwan as the proxy and U.S. fighting China through the proxy of Taiwan.
Well, that would assume the United States. But you want to remember, you're hypothesizing a situation where China dominates Asia.
Oh, it already has dominated.
Yeah, it's already dominated Taiwan.
I see.
But
where do you find the proxies?
Well,
Australia?
The Middle East could be a good case.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Oh,
Persian Gulf. Right.
Oh, boy. And then our discussion of Israel becomes even more dramatically.
Yeah, well, Israel gets involved. I think in this scenario, if you're talking about a U.S.-China competition, right, and you're talking about the Middle East, I think it's the Gulf. It's the Saudis, the Iranians, the Iraqis. It's the oil.
Don't you think it could be Israel versus Iran with some very 1984 kind of dramatic partnership of Iran, Russia, and China versus the United States, Europe, and Israel?
I think that's possible. Yeah, I think that's possible.